The magic world, and frankly the world in general, tends to run on trust. Specifically in the magic world, there are creators and companies that we trust that when they put a product out, it's going to be quality. You may have seen a buzz in the last few weeks about a new book by a mysterious author or group of authors. This is Percolations, and it's written by the Swan Collective. All of the marketing around this book has been very mysterious and somewhat ambiguous. No one really knows who the author is, and while they're saying who they're not really telling us who they are. Now, I don't know who the collective is, but I have a few theories and I'm going to share that with you later in the video. But the question is, why would someone publish magic under a pseudonym? In fact, even in this booklet, the author or authors admit that this is a bit strange. And frankly, now of all times seems like the worst time to be publishing magic anonymously. If you're not already caught up on it, there's the whole debacle of New Guy on the Magic Cafe. We don't have time to explain that here, but talk to someone who knows. It's an interesting tale. And whether intentional or not, there's also the connotative value of the Mr. Blonde collective, which blew up. Now, according to the website for the Swan Collective, they say that they are not Michael Weber and they are not Mr. Blonde, but who knows? The bottom line is that 90+% of all magic products are bought and sold on trust. And building a brand, often the author or creator's own name, is how you build that trust and provide value. You know that certain names are always going to deliver with magic that you like. According to the authors of this book, they want the material to sink or swim on its own merits and give hints that they may have already published books that you might have in your library. Let's talk about the book itself. It is soft cover and perfect bound. It's about 65-ish pages. There's one essay, 7 tricks, and 3 ideas at the end of the book that are more techniques with some limited applications. But let's get into whether or not this material is worth your consideration, time, and the cost. So the question around this book that we're all asking ourselves is, does the magic stand on its own merits without the reputation of the author behind it? We don't know the reputation of the author since we don't know who it is, but I can tell you that this book is written in a slightly over-the-top style. At times, it's pretentious, using a lot of really big words and sentences that are far too wordy to really be clear. And at other times, it's cheeky, slightly sarcastic, or poking fun at some situation or another. The bottom line is it doesn't seem to take itself too seriously. And that's not a bad thing. As previously mentioned, it is all card material, and much of it is accessible in terms of the skill level you'll need to perform it. Given the size of the book, I thought it might be helpful if I walk through some of the tricks and give you my impressions to help you understand where my head is with this. Ironically, many of the plots within this book fall into the list that I created last week. There's a pick a card effect at the beginning which falls into the whole impostress princess or matrix principle discovery. As the first effect, I expected this to be one of the strongest, but frankly, it didn't overwhelm me as being that great. As you would expect with a matrix principle type discovery, there is a ton of procedure, even if the authors think that they gave it a good motivation. They claim that involving a second participant is a new way of thinking, but both participants are thinking of the same card. And after reading it, I was left with the thought, why not just force one card and forego all of the procedure that's necessary to discover the card, and instead use the best parts of the presentation to reveal the forced card. Not only that, the method requires the performer to remember and be able to perform some mathematics in their head under fire in the heat of a presentation, and if you have that kind of horsepower or are willing to do the work, why not just memorize a deck? And at that point, you're probably already performing better thought of card revelations than this trick. The second effect is a wild card infused Monte routine called Wimp. There's a Streets of New York presentation. We talked about this last week. Pretty hackneyed. They claim within the book that they've solved the gotcha sting of most Monte effects while providing this additional kicker with the wildcard style effect. But if I recall correctly, Color Monte, which is one of the first Montes that anyone learns, already handles that gotcha sting by recalling the entire events of the performance as a memory of the performer themselves. And it also has a very nice kicker in the routine of the $14 card at the end. I'm not necessarily advocating for Color Monte as much as I am pointing out that if you already perform or know how to perform that, then methodologically and presentationally, Wimp really doesn't add that much. The authors themselves point out in the footnotes that there are at least 347 Monte-styled effects on Dennis Bear's excellent Conjuring archive. The point in saying that is twofold. If you're interested in the wild card or Monte plot, you likely already have a version that you like, and there's a plethora of places to find something out about these routines. And the second thing is that this is a good time to say that they do provide credits and sources of inspiration throughout the text. And frankly, they seem pretty well read, referencing everything from Ibidem to Paul Harris. Roundabout Retreat is a magician in trouble type plot without the magician in trouble acting. The first problem I had with it is that you're showing the participant cards one at a time, asking them to remember the card and the number that that card resides at. Anyone who's performed for normal people knows that people have a hard enough time remembering the name of their card if they know it, much less the number. So you're certainly not going to be performing this for anyone who's had anything to drink. Once they've thought of a card, remembered the number, they cut the deck, you cut the deck, you ask them for the number that they thought of, you count down to it. It's not their card, but it does reveal where their card is in the deck. Frankly, I think there's a far more straightforward version of this type of effect in Eugene Berger's Mastering the Art of Magic under the title Spelling Stunner. You basically get the same effect without the participant having to remember the number of their card as well. The whole procedure is just a lot more straightforward. Top 20 is the first trick I saw in this booklet where I couldn't remember a similar trick published elsewhere. It's basically a revelation of a card from a list of hit songs from a 1966 top chart from some radio station in San Francisco, along with a revelation of that card with some alphabet cards. If it sounds a bit convoluted, that's because it probably is. It's definitely a specialty type effect with quite a bit of process, although there are several climaxes. Due to this specialized nature, it might work in a parlor type situation or at a party with friends, but it doesn't feel like a paying audience type of effect. In fact, most of this material feels like it's geared more toward fooling magicians who are generally more interested in the method and have a lot more patience for procedure than the typical lay audience. The next trick, 90% procedure, is explicitly stated to be a magician fooler, although it will likely fool your audience as well. It's a 10-card poker type routine, but without the sting of the magician winning. It also feels like it could have been an ESP card matching style routine, and that's even indicated in the footnotes. Instant Sandwich is pretty much self-explanatory. The deck is shuffled by your participant, they choose a card, the deck is reassembled, and then instantly you're able to spread the cards and their card is in between two face-up mates. This will definitely have some appeal to those who like sleight of hand techniques, and the whole effect is over pretty quickly. The final effect in the booklet is a Triumph-style routine with 3 selections, a tabled wash shuffle, and a color-changing rainbow deck kicker. This one is not for the faint of heart, as it will require 3 perfect pharaohs, as well as some other more traditional techniques to pull off a Triumph-style routine. Again, I'm reminded of what I consider more practical solutions to what should be a similar effect, like Paul Harris's Color Stunner or David Williamson's Funner Color Stunner. The final 3 items are ideas for an 8-card cull, a think a card idea along the same lines as a Dunninger ploy, sort of, and a way to predict the top cards of 3 dealt piles. None of these are completed presentations or even actual tricks. They're just some thoughts that ostensibly you could take further and pursue on your own. So what do we know about the author or authors? Nothing really. I identified pretty early on that the name Reed Swan is actually an anagram. That's right, if you shuffle those letters around, you see that it actually spells out S.W. Erudite. The writing style and scripts feel very British to me. There's some wording and just the way that things are written feels like it comes from the UK. Ultimately, I actually think this is where this book breaks down and returns me to what I said at the beginning. Without knowing who the author is, and possibly having multiple authors, it just doesn't feel like there's a unifying theme. Sure, everything is card magic, but it's not all close-up, it's not all parlor, it's not all self-working, and it's not all sleight of hand. Many times, variety like this can be a good thing, but given the relatively small size of the booklet, there's likely not enough to satisfy the people who want each one of those things. But the cost is only $20 plus shipping, so if something I mentioned sounds like it would appeal to you, then feel free to check it out. I actually rather enjoyed the whole cloak and dagger aspect of the emails to me and the marketing, but just feel like the material is overly complicated and procedural compared with other, more elegant solutions with essentially the same effect. If you made it this far in the video, sound off down below with who you think the real Read Swans collective is. And as always, my friends, I appreciate you watching. Until next time, keep reading.